Marawi ang sagot, ang iisang dugo ay galit ang bumabalot. Mga walang kamuwang-muwang, kayakap ang luha at pagod. Mga maling at hikain ay di tamang sagot. Marawi, sabay-sabay nating ibabangon buong pagmamahal, tayo ay aahon. Marawi, darating din ang isang dapit hapon, sisikat ang araw sa isang bagong ngayon. Kristiyano at Muslim, hindi ba't iisa? Nilalang tayo ni Allah na iisang Ama. Kung bubuksan ang puso ng bawat isa, sa mundo ang maghahari ay higit saya. Marawi, sabay-sabay nating ibabangon buong pagmamahal, tayo ay aahon. Marawi, darating din ang isang dapit hapon, sisikat ang araw sa isang bagong ngayon. Hindi kulay ang kailangan upang magkaisa, pula, puti, asul, dilaw, tayo ay iisa. Ang pag-ibig, isa puso, yan ang mahalaga. Ako, ikaw, sila, tayo'y magsama-sama. Marawi, sabay-sabay nating ibabangon buong pagmamahal, tayo ay aahon. Marawi, darating din ang isang dapit hapon, sisikat ang araw sa isang bagong ngayon. Marawi, sabay-sabay nating ibabangon buong pagmamahal, tayo ay aahon. Marawi, darating din ang isang dapit hapon, sisikat ang araw sa isang bagong ngayon.
Marawi City is now in the hands of the Republic of the Philippines, but with a very high price. 40 billion pesos, 155 soldiers died and hundreds were wounded to take Marawi City. I use the word take, although some people use the word retaken, because historically, the Maranaos were never taken. For 400 years, the Spaniards attacked them, invaded them, killed thousands of them, but the Spaniards left. And Lanao was in the hands of the Maranaos. 50 years, the Americans invaded them, killed thousands of them, but the Americans left. And so Lanao is in the hands of the Maranaos. The Japanese came for 4 years, killed many of them, but left. And so the Maranaos still control Lanao area. And the question that many people would ask, kailan naging Pilipino ang mga Maranao? only when Marawi City was taken by the forces of the Republic of the Philippines, and 250,000 Maranaos are under the umbrella of the Philippine flag in the evacuation centers. In fact, no one can enter Marawi City today if you are not a Filipino. You have to carry with you an ID or a passport issued by the Republic of the Philippines, because that territory is bought by billions of pesos and hundreds of lives of Filipino soldiers. Only when another person or another group can do that can they say Marawi belongs to them. Until then, it is a part, officially and finally, part of the Republic of the Philippines. To God be the glory. But the price was so high. But when God made you and me members of His kingdom, the price was even greater. Because it's not in pesos nor in dollars that your salvation and my salvation was established, but it is through the blood of the only Son of God. Kindly open your Bibles to the book of 1 John. 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 to 12. 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 to 12. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son into the world that we might live through Him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and His love is made complete in us. Let's give God a clap offering. To God be the glory. God paid the ultimate sacrifice when He sent His only Son to liberate us from the power of sin that separates us from God. Sin never separated God from us, but sin separated us from God. We no longer have the power to return to God because sin is so powerful. It's like a magnet. A magnet has two poles. South pole and North pole will attract each other, but if you have two North poles, they will repel and reject each other. That's the reason why no matter what man will do, he cannot reach God. In fact, because of the darkness, he does not know the way. It's so dark, his soul, his mind, his heart is so darkened that instead of recognizing God, instead of returning to God, he invents and manufactures things that he believes would satisfy the longings of his soul. That's why in the book of Romans chapter 1, Apostle Paul clarified the reason why people are doing the things they are doing is not because of lack of education. It is not lack of culture. It is not lack of technology. It is because of a darkened mind, a darkened heart, and a darkened soul. People create things for themselves. Wherever you go in this world, people try to make things and they bow down to these things that they have created. Perhaps some people do not bow down to a graven image, but they bow down to their bank books, to their businesses, to other things in this world, and they make those things ahead of God because they do not know the way to God. And Jesus liberates us from that darkness. He liberates us from that bondage of worshiping ourselves instead of worshiping Him. I don't know if you have heard about Jack Ma, not Jack Lam. Iba yun si Jack Lam. Wanted yun. Jack Ma is the richest man in China. He is the founder and the chairman of Alibaba. 18 years ago, Jack Ma was nobody. Nobody entertained him. In fact, he tried to enroll in 3 universities in China, and 3 universities rejected him. But there was one university which accepted him. It's a university for teachers. And so he graduated with a degree of education. When he graduated from that university, he wanted to study at Harvard University. 10 times he applied. He was turned down 10 times. He applied for different jobs, actually 30 jobs he applied for. Everyone rejected him. When KFC entered China, he applied to work with KFC. There were 25 applicants, 24 were accepted. How do you feel if you have been rejected, and rejected? 18 years ago, he wanted to start this business through the internet, and many people call him Crazy Jack. He went to the United States to raise funds to get capital. So China is now a capitalist because Chinese are looking for capital. He was rejected by the banks, but his friends loaned him at least $50,000 to start his business. From only 18 people, Alibaba has now 50,000 partners all over the world, and 6 million businesses are using the platform of Alibaba. They just bought Lazada, and they bought 40% of Yahoo. But what I like about Jack Ma, I don't know if he is a Christian, but he said, this one thing that stuck into my mind, and he said, never consider yourself successful. Never consider yourself. He said, every time they would ask me, is Alibaba successful? His answer was, we are only 18 years old. We are just a baby. Who knows 30 years from now? Because he said every time a person thinks he is successful, he begins to be arrogant and proud. And pride would bring you to destruction. You see great empires, great kingdoms in the past. They rose and fell. When they rose, people all over thought nobody can stop them. But the reason why they fell is that they begin to worship themselves instead of worshiping God. And because their minds are darkened, they begin to manufacture and invent something that they could worship instead of worshiping God. And Jesus came to liberate us from the darkness so that we can start worshiping Him, appreciating what He has done, and serving Him with our full heart. The second thing that Jesus did when He came, He set us free from the bondage of hatred. He did not only set us free from the bondage of sin, which separated us from God, but He also set us free from the bondage of hatred that separates men from his fellow men. If you look at history, how many millions of people died because of hatred? Ethnic cleansing. One tribe do not like the other tribe. One clan do not like the other clan. There is hatred in the hearts, and I am glad that this message was given by God through a person who experienced suffering, persecution, and rejection, John the Apostle. He was the last of the apostle who died, and he died a lonely man on the island of Patmos. But there on that island of Patmos, God revealed to him that it is only through the love of God that this world would be healed from this problem of hatred. There are 3 billion computers in the world today which can actually talk to each other. 3 billion computers, including your cell phones, can talk to each other no matter where they are in the world. It does not matter if it is made in the Philippines, made in China, made in Japan, made in Korea, made in Taiwan. It does not matter. These computers can actually talk to each other even if they are separated by thousands of miles. But that was not possible before 1983. Because before 1983, computers were isolated. Although there were people who were able to come up with certain networks. But these networks are not interconnected with each other. One group has 100 computers. Sila-sila lang ang nag-uusap. Another network has 300 computers. Sila-sila lang din ang nag-uusap. But 2 brilliant individuals came up with the idea, why not connect all of these networks? At first, they had a hard time convincing these networks to use only one protocol because they were already earning a lot of money. There was a network that you have to deposit thousands of dollars in order to be a member. And so these 2 individuals tried to convince all of these networks that we should be interconnected. And they said we should set a date, and that would be January 1, 1983, that all the networks will no longer use their own protocols. They will use the unified protocol of the internet. And that's the reason why you don't have to pay thousands of dollars to communicate with someone in Ireland, in Norway, in Saudi Arabia, because of these 2 individuals who tried to connect all this network, whether it is by radio, by microwave, by satellite. All the networks can be now connected through the internet. But the problem is, the people using the computers do not understand each other. The computers understand each other, but not the people. They even do not like each other. They hate each other, and they use the internet to fuel their hatred for each other. How many millions died since 1983 because of racial hatred and political divisions? We have now the device that is supposed to unite all of us. Because the computers can now talk to each other. They can now understand each other. They have only one language. But not the people using the computers. In fact, it has been observed that because of the internet, crimes have risen. Killings have risen. It is ironic that we have invented something that is supposed to unite us, and we are using it to fuel our hatred. How many nations have been destroyed since 1983? Philippines is not exempted. How many churches have been divided since 1983? There was a policy in the Kamakop prohibiting people to have signature campaign. But what that policy did not realize, that there are cell phones, computers, that you can use to destroy people. Hatred in the heart is one of the consequences of sin, and Jesus came to liberate us from this slavery to the hatred in our hearts. Maria Dyer was born in 1837 on the mission field in China, where her parents were pioneer missionaries. Both her parents died when Maria was a little girl, and she was sent back to England to be raised by an uncle. The loss of her parents, however, did not deter her young heart from the importance of sharing the gospel. At age 16, she, along with her sister, returned to China. Can you imagine? Your parents brought you to China. They died in China. As a little girl, you're brought back, stayed with your uncle, and when you're 16, you desire to be in China? 5 years later, she married Hudson Taylor, a man well known today for his life of ministry, faith, and sacrifice. Hudson and Maria's work was often criticized, even by other Christians. At one point, Maria wrote, "As to the harsh judgings of the world, or the more painful misunderstandings of Christian brethren, I generally feel that the best plan is to go on with our work and leave God to vindicate our cause." Of their 9 children, only 4 survived to adulthood. Maria herself died of cholera when she was just 43. But she believed the cause was worthy of the sacrifice. On her grave marker, these words were inscribed: "For her to live was Christ, and to die was gain." The greatest indication that we have been liberated from the power of sin is when our hearts are set free to be sacrificed for the good of others. To God be the glory.